Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it's time for part 2 of the Q&A, so let's go ahead and get this started. Alright, first question. I know you're not a doctor, but I picked up an injury every time I take prolonged time away from the gym and return. It's like a lower back pain. When I first pick up this injury, I struggle to stand up straight or walk after a couple days. It'll turn into a warm throb that'll occur in my hamstring and lower back and groin, but I seem to be able to train with it, and it won't come back until I take a prolonged break and return again. All right, brother, you're right. I'm not a doctor, but I did stay at Holiday Inn Express last night. And this has nothing to do with being a medical doctor to be able to tell you what's going on. You're detraining, you're losing mobility. My solution to you is stop taking time away from training. And if you're going to take time away from training, maybe you need to ease back into it more slowly. Since you know you have problems with your lower back, hamstring tightening, everything else, work on your hamstring mobility, strengthen your lower back, strengthen your core every time before you come back to the gym if this is becoming a reoccurring problem for you. And this is one of the things that I tell people, and I mean, this is stuff I have to deal with Brittany with all the time. You need to make training a committed part of your lifestyle. And if you're going to take time away, you should expect that you're going to have problems. You're choosing to not have a healthy lifestyle, and there are consequences to that. And in your case, you know you have a specific set of inflammations and irritations that happen to you every time you take time away from training and you come back. So the simple solution, stop quitting training. Stop it. Commit to going ahead and training for the rest of your life. That will resolve this problem. It'll go away and you'll never have to deal with it again. All right, next question. I recently lost a lot of weight and have a bit of loose skin. I was wondering if it would be possible to fill up the skin by building muscle, or is surgery the only option? I don't think either one of those are the only option. Actually, what you find with loose skin, and I go through this myself because I mean I got really fat while I was sick, and I never fully have gotten ultra lean in any way again. The unfortunate fact is that loose skin usually occurs as a result of the last layer of fat adhering to the skin, and until you burn off the last bit of fat under there, you're going to have that loose skin, because essentially your fat seems to burn from the inside out when you're losing it for the most part. I'm not saying that's completely true, but there's a tendency towards that. And so that last sheet of layer of fat underneath the skin doesn't have all the connective tissue pulling it back in, and because the connective tissue on the skin side of it, it tends to hang there. Your loose skin is actually loose body fat. It's loose fat. Skin is paper thin. In other words, your skin isn't like a 1/4 inch thick or anything. So if you look at what you have that you're calling loose skin, I mean, and I have some of this myself right now, so I mean I can relate. I'm just telling you how it is. It's loose fat. If you want it to tighten up, you're going to have to lose the last bit of fat. And if you're unwilling or unable to lose the last bit of fat that's keeping it all loose there so that it can tighten up, then surgery is going to be your only option at that point. But if you get leaner, you drink plenty of water, stay hydrated, get good nutrition, it will tighten up dramatically more than it is now. But it is going to be a slow process, and you just have to accept that at a certain point. All right, next question. Hi, Jason. I was curious about the implications of an athlete who has used steroids in the past, been off for years, completing with Lifetime Naturals. Specifically, a female friend of mine did 1 cycle of Anavar, 10 milligrams for a couple months, I believe, at age 17, and I suspect it was a stronger compound. But now she's been off for 3 years and now contemplating getting into powerlifting. Could she still be considered a natural athlete, or would at least her maximal strength potential be the same as if she had never used? Would it be unfair to the Lifetime Naturals competing? All right, the way you have to look at this, no. Once you've cashed in your natty card, you're not really a natty anymore. But here's the thing. Tons of the people that she's competing against have probably done the same thing. You need to get with the real world. Is the fact that probably people who are going to be beating her in competition, the fact that some of them just came off their cycle 3 months ago and still passed their drug test, is that any fair either? That's the problem with having drug testing in sports. You can't make it apply. You can't make it fair. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say, if you can pass the drug test, you're probably not cheating. And I know people are going to say, oh my God, how hypocritical, how terrible. Well, I'm sorry, guys, that's just reality. Rules are put into place with the ability to catch someone cheating. And if a person successfully cheats in a way that the rules are unable to catch them, then maybe the rules need to be adjusted to something they're actually physically capable of doing, such as actually catching people. In other words, having a rule in place that you can't actually enforce is going to open it up to abuse. That's just a simple reality of it. And you know, you guys know how I feel about all this. I think drug testing in sports is just silly. It's just a silly waste of resources because it's a pipe dream. You're not going to make it stick. It can't. You can't stop people. Doesn't mean it's right for people to do it. Doesn't make it right, but it makes it reality. And when you go into sports, that's something you're simply going to have to accept. Now, back to your friend specifically, one cycle, no, it doesn't make any permanent changes. If you only do one cycle, you're going to lose all of it. I guarantee you. In fact, there's a couple YouTubers who people are pointing out have lost a lot of their gains recently. Yeah, because even though they stayed on a long time, they don't know how to train. They're morons. They literally have no idea how to train. So they come off their drugs and they shrink. They're losing their enhanced gains because they never learned how to train. They only know how to use drugs and train like a bro. But as far as long-term changes go, the studies that we do have on this, the limited studies we have, show that only people who use for long periods of time do they make permanent changes. And long periods of time, I'm talking people who have used for a couple of years. People, even if they cycled on and off of stuff, if they did it for 2-3 years, there are permanent structural changes that still can be found with a muscle biopsy years later. And that's what people need to understand. That's why drug testing is so silly. A muscle biopsy will tell you if someone was a prolonged user of anabolics even years after they come off. But a single cycle, no. It's not going to have any lasting permanent effects. In fact, it's silly and a waste of time to even bother. And that's my opinion on that too. So that being said, even if I were to take a team of girls to compete against her and I were to train them and coach them, I really wouldn't care if they competed against someone who did one cycle 3 years ago. I really wouldn't care. It wouldn't bother me if I was their coach. So I'll just leave it that way. All right, next question. Hey, Jason. I've seen some of your old videos on this topic, but you seem to have changed your mind a couple of times. To maximally develop your hamstrings, you need both hip extension and knee flexion exercises. And if so, do you have any suggestions for knee flexion exercises if a glute ham raise isn't available? All right, do all 3 of the hamstrings require knee flexion? No, only the biceps femoris does. The other 2 heads of the hamstring can be fully developed without any knee flexion. Those can be developed purely with hip hinging exercises. Now, the biceps femoris, what do I recommend? A glute ham raise. Now, you guys did see me do some standing hamstring curls for a little while, didn't you? Well, I have access to a glute ham raise now, so therefore I would never need to do those. If you don't have those, access to that, if it is really important to you to fully develop your biceps femoris, and it may or may not be, this is context specific. Not every person needs to have every single head of every muscle of their body fully developed. All right, it's not necessary for most people's goals. However, if it becomes necessary for you to do this until you can get a hold of a glute ham raise, then I would suggest that you do hamstring curls then if it's really important to you to develop that 3rd head of the hamstring. However, I still believe that the hamstring curl isn't going to be as good as a glute ham raise as an overall exercise. So I'd recommend that if it's really important to you to develop that head, if maximum hamstring development is really important enough for you to worry about, you need to find a way to get your hands on a glute ham raise, even if that means purchasing one yourself for $200 or $300. You'll get one for $300 off Rogue Fitness right now. Fit in your bedroom, fit in your garage. Get one if it's that important to you. All right, next question. I live in a country with little sunshine. I know that lifting improves bones. You think lifting is enough to improve to keep my bones strong, even if I don't take vitamin D3? Any research on the topic? Thank you and keep up the good work. No, I think if you live in a dark country, you're going to need to get vitamin D3 fortified food, or you're going to need to take it. I'm not big on supplementation, but that's one of those that falls into an area that's a very common possible nutrient deficiency. There are not many nutrient deficiencies that are common for people with a balanced diet. right? They're relatively rare, which is why supplementation isn't very necessary for people's goals or for health or fitness or anything else. But vitamin D3 is a known documented common deficiency, particularly in darker countries, particularly if you have more melanin in your skin, more skin pigmentation versus the darker area you're in or the darker times of the year. It's a real big deal. But why don't you look to see which of your foods are fortified with it? Because this is one of those that is so common and so documented that foods tend to be fortified with it just to make sure it doesn't become a problem. So look at your food labels, see what you're consuming. You'd be surprised how many foods that you're buying at the store that aren't just completely whole foods, you know, such as just straight meat, vegetables, grains, things that have been processed in any way, like cereals, even dairy, things like that. They're very frequently fortified with D3, particularly in darker regions. It's going to be really common. So it's very possible you're already okay, that it's already been supplemented in. But if not, fortunately, D3 is a very cheap supplement. Not that hard for you to get. All right, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time in part 3.